What up, guys and girls? It is Bobby.
And it's Sean.
And I guess we're back. We missed last week.
Did we miss last week? No, we were here last week.
No, we missed last week, didn't we?
No, we were here last week. It was 2 weeks ago, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago that we were consistently absent.
Oh, well,
This isn't official. Like we've established some sort of continuous, time space continuum between last week and this week.
Oh yeah, you're right. We did have one last week. Wow.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
Yeah, we are there. We are present. Consistency, that's what we're all about. Fitness-wise, yes. Podcast, you get us when you get us. We've said this so many other times. Deal with it.
Yeah, I am working next weekend, so I will not be available next weekend.
Well, see, there you go. We've now forecasted what podcast you will not have to look for next week. Although it shouldn't have to be said, but you shouldn't be looking for any other podcast regardless, because this is the only voice on the interwebs that you can trust.
This is very true. In other news, this podcast is sponsored by 10,000. Use the code CronusFit15 for 15% off your first order. They've been a great sponsor to us. Really excited to announce some of the stuff we've been working on with them. And they've been really gracious to sponsor a lot of these scholarships. So shout out to 10,000.
Yeah, huge fans. It was only maybe within the last 8 months that we talked with them. And they've got a ton of veterans outreach. It's not just Cronus Fit that they've been supporting. Every single month, they've been targeting soft athletes, quote unquote, and nonprofits that are military related in order to give back to the larger community. So that's like one of the things that when we saw their dedication to other groups, it wasn't just this is something we want to throw on social media. They rarely broadcast it. So I think it's something that should be said. It shows, at least to me, their sincerity and, giving back to the military community.
Yeah, and they make some pretty sweet workout gear. Big fan of the workout gear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what should we start this week's episode talking about? Lots of things.
I think we should start with first announcing the 4 studs that won this year's Cronus Scholars. We had like twice as many applications as we had last year, just like twice the amount that I had the year before. So we're super proud that the Cronus Fit Scholarship has not only grown in applicants, but it's grown in the scholarship value. And just love seeing that people are making this transition, and we just want to be there to support the costs that are associated with it. Okay, so now that we're going to insert a drum roll. If you didn't hear a drum roll, you've heard a drum roll. The 4 individuals that we've got that are now official 2021 Cronus Scholars. We've got Devin Slaughter, Nicholas Lee, Jackson Sinnott, and Anthony Allen. Super proud of all these dudes. 3 of them are coming from the 75th Ranger Regiment. All of them are airborne. I feel like that maybe next year should be a requirement. Do you think you have to be airborne qualified to be a Cronus Scholar, or is that just something that we're just now setting a trend?
I think it's something that we've just been setting a trend. We've had a lot of regiment guys apply. And, for those people that are thinking about applying, you do not have to be a regiment guy or soft to apply. It just so happens that we get a lot of soft guys that do apply.
Yeah, we are not tailoring the scholarship to only individuals that served in the Ranger Regiment. But every single year, and you can see more of this on the website under the Meet Our Scholars section, each one of these individuals wrote essays, and it stood out to both of us that really epitomized this idea of the forever soldier, or, once a Marine, always a Marine, that kind of language. Because every single one of them wants to dedicate at least something that they're learning or they're going to learn at school to giving back to the military community and reaching back and lending that helping hand to be a mentor, to say, hey, this is what I've done, this is how to get here, or this is how you should do the transition process. Because while there are great programs on each one of the military posts now with SFL TAP and Hire Our Heroes, it is a very daunting process of getting out of the military. I feel like getting into the military is very easy. You just go, you sign a bunch of paperwork, you put on like a really flashy uniform that makes you blend into almost anything unless you're wearing ACUs. And then you're in and you're told when and where to be. But when you get out, there's really nothing there to guide you as to the finances that are associated with this transition. When you go back to school, who do you contact for GI Bill, paperwork, all that kind of stuff? And then even more so if you're going to the professional workforce straight away, like, what do I wear on my first day? So for me, when I was making that transition and how I look at it every single year now with these scholarship applicants, it's like these questions are going to occur every single year. And we just want to be like a one-stop shop to help out.
Yeah, we talked about in the past on other episodes, talking about like transitioning from the military, going from like the military side to civilian, whether it's through school or work or what have you. But for those that made that transition, it is a very challenging transition in one's life. So we're just hoping to somehow help a little bit and help blunt some of the huge changes that come with getting out.
Yeah. So with this year's scholarship being officially concluded, next year, if you're looking to transition, hit us up. We'll open up the scholarship window probably 9 months from now as you start hearing back from the schools and the programs that you're getting into. And the application process is pretty simple. And yeah, we'll love to just continue to help individuals out. Again, the partnership with 10,000 is enabling us to continue to increase these scholarship values and then into the next year now. So we're super, super humbled by our experiences and being able to share a little bit of what Cronus Fit has grown into this process and what is our main charity drive every year. So thanks to everyone that's listened to that's been part of Cronus Fit for the last, we 4 years in now, almost 5. Yeah. So just thanks for everything. Every single year, this means so much to us when we get to send out these notifications. It's like why we do what Cronus Fit is.
Yeah, it's been kind of wild seeing, the growth of Cronus Fit over the last 4 years. I mean, we started was it May of 2017, I think is when we started. And then since then, we're now up to like 30,000 Instagram followers, something like 10,000 daily visitors to the site. And now, even the scholarship, we've grown exponentially in the scholarship to now we're doing 4 by $2,500, so $10,000 this year on the scholarship.
Yeah. And when we were kind of thinking with the scholarship, like what did we want to make it? When we started generating some of the revenue and identifying, okay, we're a nonprofit, where are we going to send these funds? You'll see on our site, we kind of picked like a bunch of charities almost every single month. In fact, we'd have like a charity of the month. But then we saw the opportunity that the scholarship provided and said, okay, this should be like what Cronus Fit is. This is all year what these funds should go to. Not saying that we're not going to reach out and help out charities throughout the calendar year, but we want this to be our legacy going forward. Cronus Fit is known for having probably like 3 or 4 things. 1, and you can't see me, I'm holding my fingers up if you're not watching the YouTubes. 2, incredibly good looking owners. I mean, like Bobby, jacked. I look probably like a lean Billabong model right now, like circa 2004, maybe Chris Hemsworth. We're swimming on the beach together, avoiding the shocks. But 2, great fitness. And 3, we just giving back to Rangers and Soldiers with the Cronus Fit scholarship program.
Yeah, the scholarship has definitely become kind of our main effort, if you will. I'm just really happy to kind of give back to those who are looking forward to moving on to the next step.
All right. So as many of you know, I guess last week we talked about Afghanistan. I don't think we should, beat it too much further this week, but I mean, like, I feel like the elephant in the room is the travesty that happened at the gate with 12 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman that were killed by a suicide bomber. And I think well over now 100 Afghans Um, I it like froze me when I saw that on the news, because at first you knew when the reports came out, and I think it was like a handful of Marines that were listed as being killed in action, that with the resources that were on the ground at HKIA and BAF being closed, that like that sickening feeling of that number will probably go up because they don't have the medical on hand to deal with something like a mass cal event. And then you know how selfless the Americans are going to be in trying to also treat the Afghans, in dealing with that chaotic situation. And then seeing that happen, I mean, like it broke my heart, man. It is. They're all there doing the right thing, and it's not it's not supposed to be like a combat situation over there. This isn't like they were fighting in Helmand in 2009, 2010, and this happened. This was like a humanitarian mission trying to help those that have helped us over the last 2 decades get out. And to see this kind of attack happen, it was gut wrenching. It made me really, really angry. And I mean, I felt hollowed watching the whole thing unfold 2 weeks ago with Afghanistan, and this just brought it to a whole new level. It's just it's awful and atrocious, and like my heart just breaks for those, you know, families of the Marines and their units and the individuals that serve with them.
Yeah, it's just, just a sad and honestly pretty avoidable situation, I'd have to say, Like we knew that this day was going to come where we would start, pulling out and taking people with us, and then, the, Doha Accords where we like made a deal with the Taliban that they would, essentially provide out of cordon security while we screened Afghans through to the airfield. And I think like it was just a matter of time for this to happen, and it's just a shame that so many American service members were killed in action, and many more casualties that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are a couple things that you just brought up there that make a lot of people that have been over there really frustrated. And one of the first that you mentioned was the agreement with the Taliban. I did not think, well, I'll take that back. I had a feeling that some coordination had to happen between the Taliban and the United States in order to process all of these individuals through HKIA. But I'm still flabbergasted that, 6 months ago, if you had said, oh, do you think, the United States would have to make an agreement with the Taliban in order to withdraw from Afghanistan, I would have laughed out loud. I would have lolled, because in what world do we negotiate with terrorists? It's almost like we are giving them this legitimacy, and they completely failed. Like, who would have known? Who would have known these individuals would have failed at doing like a simple, orderly task of screening individuals and creating a buffer between other, terrorist actors in Afghanistan and then the main gates of HKIA? Who would have thought that they would have failed that? Oh, everyone, literally everyone. And now they have all this tricked out gear. I saw a dude with like a PAS 13 on his M4. Like, those are the individuals we're relying on to secure our own. And it goes back, there's, everyone on Instagram has probably been sharing this kind of stuff. The amount of soldiers that were deployed to secure the capital compared to the amount of soldiers and Marines that we have in Afghanistan to secure tens of thousands of fleeing Afghans, and then the 5,000 to 6,000 service members that are still holding strong on what is not Bagram airfield. Like, again, not to play like, Monday quarterback, but why wasn't this done through Bagram, where we have towers, where we have gates, where we have, sectors of fire established to prevent this kind of thing from happening, with, shooting or a way to channel and funnel people on it. Just, oh, it's so frustrating. It's because it's like you said, it's all so avoidable.
And this kind of like, goes back to our conversation the other week about, holding leaders accountable for these actions. And you have like, the CENTCOM commander there. You have all these general officers who, are essentially overseeing these operations, and then, have this gross negligence and failure of leadership to really plan and execute just a relatively humanitarian mission and not even a combat mission. It's just a
Right.
sad, sad situation.
Or it's sharing the information with the Afghans. The Taliban was aware that there was the potential for an ISIS-K attack. The United States knew for sure that one was coming, but the individuals that are going to these gates had no idea. There was a female reporter that is on the ground in Afghanistan that asked the Taliban spokesperson what's to be done about securing these gates and the likelihood of an attack, waved it off. But the fact that it wasn't shared with the Afghans on the ground, who had no idea that an attack was imminent, is also frustrating. If we're gonna, before we roll into a town, blast on an air horn, get out before the shooting starts when we go into raids, why didn't we have the decency to say, hey, I know it's dangerous trying to get here. You should really avoid the gate tomorrow because there's an imminent attack. Like that, where's that decency?
Yeah, I mean, you have to also consider, like, from the Afghan perspective, like, even if there was, the threat of attack, I think that a lot of people would make that, that calculus and say that, if this is my chance to get out of Afghanistan, to go to another country, and then if I stay here, I might as well be dead. So I imagine a lot of people even then would still consider that decision part of the decision making calculus as well.
Absolutely. But it just goes back to the trust. If we are over there projecting this like altruistic, transparent effort to get people out, and it's already been criticized, this is just adding another level of distrust for American foreign policy right now, when the very people that we're supposed to be helping, we can't inform of, some ensuing attack. I'm not saying that would have prevented it, but I am saying that it would have been nice probably for these individuals to have at least been prepared or known that this was likely. I'm sure deep down they thought they could have been attacked, or someone from the Taliban might have beaten them or shot them on the way, like that being the primary danger. But then to be told, oh, by the way, ISIS is here, they're not agreeing with anyone and they're probably going to try to blow you up. Like that would have probably been part of that calculus. I just wish that all those cards would have been on the table just for everyone's awareness. Because if the 31st is close, like obviously that push to get there is going to be greater. But for God's sake, just tell people what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine there's some communication there, but who knows? Like, as far as putting it out there.
We You talked about holding leaders responsible. Did you see that Marine Lieutenant Colonel
I did see
who made
that.
that
Yeah.
announcement? What was your feeling on that?
I didn't. I will admit I didn't like watch the whole thing. I just kind of like saw some things about him, but I don't know the full story. If you know more about it than I do, but it seems like this, O5 was essentially, falling on his own sword and saying what needed to be said and putting it out there.
And I know you were saying that the limited that you had seen and researched is probably just the same amount I have, but in a larger context, he's been subsequently removed from that leadership position. How do you think that squares with either holding individuals accountable or now larger social media and the military and responding to things and being able to expose poor leadership in that manner? Do you think individuals should be relieved for that kind of activity?
As far as like the service member side, like going on social media and making like, I mean that aspect.
Yeah, like this individual, if we were to take the suicide attack out of the equation, and this individual was just criticizing his leadership for a different event, does that warrant a removal for cause from his leadership position, or how would you have managed that if you were his, superior or his senior raider?
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward that if you were to, go publicly on the record and talk about and criticize your superiors, that you probably, that's a pretty strong, case for a leave for cause. Um, Not to say that, he was wrong in what he said, but, in the military, you don't necessarily have, you've signed away a lot of your rights when you join the military. Things like good order and discipline, to enforce good order and discipline. You kind of lose your ability to voice, your personal opinion on a lot of these things. And in order to continue and uphold a, disciplined and, um, you know, disciplined military, you have to be able to make sure that your decisions aren't questioned and, your actions aren't, put on this public spotlight for everybody to review.
I think this is one of my issues that I have with mill Twitter or mill social media. I mean, like Sergeant Major has it. There's a whole bunch of senior NCOs and senior officers that have it. The only thing that I've ever seen come out of it is just cringe material. But like you were saying, I want responsibility in the hands of individuals that are making good leadership decisions. But I don't know, going on and blasting your superiors on the interwebs is the way to do it. It's clearly a shock and awe tactic, but to take this and then just expand it to all soldiers at all levels, if this individual was allowed to go on and just, go after the senior leaders on the ground there and say, what were you doing? What were you thinking? Someone needs to be held accountable. If a team leader were to do that, a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, for a platoon leader, a company commander, or a company commander were to do that with a battalion commander in, some austere situation or a future combat deployment, I just think that erodes some of the confidence in the formations that we would have. Because that's the kind of stuff that you want to have it out with your senior leadership. Go behind, the curtains and have it out. I've certainly done that in every single unit that I've been a part of, where I've reached like my boiling point with my company commander or, the staff, and said, like, we're going to have a coming to Jesus moment here. And again, usually that's one of those situations where, like, I might get fired after this, but like, this is a serious enough event where I need to say something. But I'm just fearful of mill Twitter turning into a place that then gets exploited by, Russian and Chinese actors who see the disunity in our ranks and just attack it or continually try to divide us. For all the things that are good with social media, I just think this is one of those things that's really, really bad. It's unfortunate that he's been removed because it seems like a common sense question, but I think it's one of those ones all of us are asking. So, I think individuals should be held accountable, rightly so, but I just don't think this is the right way to do it.
No, I agree with that. Like, there's something about saying about, airing your dirty laundry out in the public, like a lot of stuff you take care of behind closed doors with the relevant parties involved, and airing their grievances in such a manner, like going on social media and putting it on blast, is not, both in the public eye and in the unit's eye, going to sow distrust and, you know, disobedience essentially in the unit. Like, I can, just imagine, like, I think you can look at it from a couple of different perspectives, whether it's from the general population, that's civilians, are seeing this like '05 lieutenant colonel criticizing his superiors, calling them, like, incompetent. That erodes one of public trust in the military. So there's one aspect of it. And then from inside the military, like, imagine like a private or E4 seeing this '05 lambast his leadership. What's to stop this oath or like E3 from like going on social media and talking shit about his like own platoon leader or squad leader? Like, creating that environment inside a unit is, will tear it apart, and then just create an environment where everyone just thinks that they have, the ability or the right to just voice their grievances to whoever wants to listen to it. So that's not sustainable, I think, for a leadership and, unit cohesion level. And then not to mention like the medical, like the legal side of things, like legally airing these things out on social media where you might not even have like the clearance or two like represent the military in such manner. So there's a lot of different levels of ways that you can look at it, and I think on all levels is probably like not a good thing to do this on social media.
No, again, empathize with where this individual is coming from. Completely agree with the question that's being asked. Just disagree with the manner and the way in which it was done. Because again, for all of you that are listening, if you're either in a leadership position or you're not, or you will be in a leadership position, it's a very fine line that you have to balance, because in every single platoon I've been in, I've absolutely loved my Rangers and my soldiers, and you want to be honest with them. And we talked about the transparency at the beginning of letting the Afghans and the individuals know that there's an imminent attack. It's really hard sometimes to digest that information, either separate emotion when you want to tell those individuals that you're serving with that you're expecting to go to hell and back with you, that, oh, by the way, your boss is an absolute idiot. Like, they're going to pick that up, but you don't need to air that down. So I can't remember what it was. It was like air your grievances up, never down.
Oh yeah.
Because I've been in a situation where nobody likes the company commander and first sergeant, and you want people to be proud of their unit. Like, I've talked shit on the Stetson so many times. I don't need to repeat why I think it's a dumb hat. But if everyone in your company has a Stetson and everyone knows it's stupid, if everyone knows it's stupid but absolutely loves that everyone to their left and their right is wearing it, like, you can talk about that stupidity, in private, but like, everyone else is probably looking at that company going, man, like, they are all together. Like, do not fuck with ACO. Do not fuck with CCO. But if you start airing this stuff out, people will look at that and go, oh, they got trash leadership. They're probably going to perform poorly. Just think about it that way. You're going to have experiences where you share too much information, or you're going to have instances where you don't share enough. It's a growing thing. It's something that all leaders have to do and deal with. A really good example to see, I think it's in Band of Brothers, one of the first couple of episodes where they're talking trash on Captain Sobel, and Dick Winters really just kind of gets them to be quiet, deflects a lot of the criticism. But in seeing the show or reading the book, he dealt with a lot of that in a personal one-on-one basis with Captain Sobel or with the regimental commander. That's the way that you do it professionally. That's what makes this a profession of arms, and not some random corporate boardroom where everyone's feelings are taken into account now.
Yeah, I think that's a huge like leadership skill, is how you interact with your superiors and subordinates. Because looking back on kind of my like lieutenant junior officer days, like, it's so easy to like take a shit on like your CO and your battalion commander or what have you, and saying that, oh, the reason why we're doing this dumb thing is because we have to, because our leadership sucks and they're idiots. That's such an easy out for you as a leader, just to like push your decisions on somebody else and saying that you're doing it because you're told to do something. And that's just a lazy leadership tactic of not owning up and saying and fully getting buy-in from your guys as to why you're doing something. And I think it's definitely something that I've definitely done as like a JO. It's just like said my commander was an idiot and this is just a dumb thing, but then taking the easy way out and not having a hard conversation with your guys of like you understanding and then framing it in such a manner that makes sense to your guys without shitting on, like, putting it all in your chain of command.
Right. And you can literally extend this to any event, layouts, random, maybe tactical training and repeated training that you're going to do behind the cough. All that stuff you should be able to articulate if you are a good leader in some way, shape, or form, how it's making you better, or giving your squad leaders some left and right limits in order to develop them and say, I know this training is lackluster or it's missing something, but come to me with 2 or 3 recommendations to beef it up or bolster it so we can get some ancillary stuff knocked out, and I will 100% give you the leeway and work with you to get, you know, your squad this training. That's the kind of stuff that will separate individuals that kind of just exist in their leadership roles from the ones that take a formation and make it better than when they got there. Because again, like Bobby said, getting that buy-in and developing them so that they see their work product like on the larger focus means a whole hell of a lot when, you know, input is taken and really taken with the intent of turning it around and making something of really cohesive being the key word there, unit.
Yeah, and you know, there's like I think, you know, a thing that I kind of struggle with, and that's like a maturity level thing too, and that I didn't really appreciate like as a JO, but like kind of important how important it is to, you know, uphold the chain of command and what have you, because you know it's too easy for, you know, this dissent to, you know, be sown throughout the formation, and then it just creates a culture and, you know, a unit culture where it's okay to talk shit about the person, like you know, you talk shit about your superiors, and then ultimately like creates, you know, an environment within a unit that is not cohesive. People don't want to like work hard and just want to like check out more than if everyone was on the same page and work together.
Right. And the only times that I would really ever take issue with my commanders would be if they stepped on the toes of my team leaders, squad leaders, soldiers, rangers. If there was a specific task that, you know, every ranger squad leader knew that they planned for, whether it comes to routes, HLZs, like that is what they have been raised to develop by that point. If I had a company commander come in and said like, oh no, this is the route we're going to take, or this is, you know, how we're going to land, or this is how we're going to board the aircraft, that's where you should go, whoa, 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 time out. That's not how it works here. Like, that's my squad leader's job. Those are those instances where like immediately, you know, you see a red flag come up and like you have to address the situation, not let it fester, because your individuals need to see you put your neck on the line, sometimes even publicly, to say, like, you can tell us that we have to go raid this target and we're going to be doing an offset, but you're not planning the route. You are not establishing checkpoints. You are not coming out with, you know, a primary and alternate landing plan. That's not your job. You're just there, you know, almost like mine. I've got 2 clickers on my chest. Yeah, checkpoint 1, Roger, go ahead. Yeah. And then you almost forget that you're carrying a weapon sometimes. Like, you know, find your role, stay in it. Like The Rock says, know your role and shut your mouth.
Yeah, so you know, kind of an aside, but I think that's, you know, definitely something that I struggle a lot with as a JO, is trying to like make my guys happy versus like take on that, you know, that leadership burden and leadership challenge of really owning decisions and being that guy, that leader that, where the buck stops with you and you know, pay for it or like, you know, put it on somebody else instead of just owning it.
Yeah, and if you say something like the buck stops with me, there's no but afterwards. Do not add a caveat to the buck statement, because that's not the buck stopping with you. You know, like President Biden has said that statement multiple times, and
Oh
then
yeah.
added something afterwards that you just go, wait a second, the buck stopped with you, but we're blaming 6 other people for this failure. But those are just empty words.
Yeah, was it like the buck stops with me, but
But
Trump did this.
Trump, generals, soldiers on the ground, the
Afghans,
Taliban,
yeah.
ISIS, Mitch McConnell, uh, like you name it, Russians. Like you got to get away from that stuff because you lose credibility. And this is not like an attack on President Biden. This is just in general. If you're going to take responsibility for a failure, do not pass that on to someone else who's not present to defend themselves, 1, but 2, you know, can't even say anything, even if they were, because of that chain of command that, you know, we were talking about this whole time. It's just not, it's not a good look. you lose credibility real quick.
So I have a question for you. What do you think the legacy or like the fallout from this is going to be in terms of like Washington and Biden presidency?
I feel like the Beltway has a really narrow attention span, and with COVID still being a thing and the increase of, the federal government in that program, it'll be relatively easy for them to shift and talk about the Delta strain, like, we've been caught up talking about, or some other, policy related issue that will arise here in whatever the next 3+ years that he's still in office. But this puts a huge mark and a blemish on his foreign policy. He's already faced issue with how he's dealt with China and Russia, had a huge issue on the southern border, which is still an ongoing crisis. It's, from the perspective of national security, we talk about COVID, there's a lot of individuals crossing that likely have COVID. I think the last statistic I saw said like 1/3 or 2/3 of Americans, which is a huge shift in numbers, I understand with my science here, had COVID in the last year and a half. And they've only reflected, 22% of that in the data. But we're likely having people cross our border that are carrying COVID or the Delta strain. But his foreign policy is completely lacking, and that credibility in dealing with foreign governments and how the British see us now being able to keep our word, how the Afghans see us. You talked about it last week, but with China and Taiwan, China's beefing up their efforts there because they just see our presence and our commitment to others as being anything but strong. I don't think he responds from this absent like another military crisis where we can flex on a nation or on a terrorist organization, in the shock and awe way in which we entered Afghanistan or entered Iraq.
Do you think that there'll be new, I guess, challenges coming from like non-state actors or even state actors like Russia and China preying upon kind of using this sentiment now that are going to like try and force our hand in something?
Absolutely. I don't know I don't think Russia really, beyond Crimea and just tensions flaring there, will be anything they focus on. I don't see them having the resources or the capabilities to really flex on anywhere else in the world beyond kind of just, Europe proper. But China is going to use this as that opportunity. They're already heavily invested in Africa, well more than we are. They're investing in Afghanistan. They've got working relations with Pakistan and the Taliban now. They're meeting with them to talk about the 3.1 or 3 something trillion dollars worth of natural resources for batteries that Afghanistan is sitting on. If China wants to take the world police role and a larger role, do it. Because for the US since World War II, it has been almost like a burden and this exhaustive continuation of military conflicts for us to protect the interests of others. Because a lot of it's always politically driven. You look at the 50s, 60s, 70s with communism and how many tens of thousands of Americans died over that political rift. The 90s with oil and getting ourselves entangled for the first time in the Middle East. And then obviously the last 2 decades. If China wants to take on that role and they want to volunteer their sons and daughters to preserve their way of, totalitarian government, like go ahead, try it out. I want the US to kind of like close the borders, and not the sense of like preventing people from coming, but just like, let's train our military. Let's get back to a near peer, fighting force, but let's be way more selective with where we enter. I mean, like it took a lot to get us into World War II in Europe. Not so much with Japan, but like we need to sit back on our heels for a second, catch our breath and say, where are we going 50 years from now, and stop kind of fighting these decades worth of like random conflicts that just lead to a ton of spending and even more so a ton of death.
Yeah, it's always, it's wonder like what's next, we're gonna be in 10 years from now. I mean, there's still another, what, 3 years in Biden's administration, 2.5 years. So you have to imagine there's going to be something that is going to pop up in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I wish we spent, like, literally, if we spent a tenth of the time in planning for and engaging in conflicts and put those resources to building relations in Latin and South America, like our neighbors. I don't care about Canada, so I'm ignoring the Canucks. But if we looked at developing our continent and the neighboring continent and creating an attainable pathway to citizenship, like we have tens of millions of illegal immigrants in the country that are contributing to our economy, that I guarantee if you gave them the opportunity to become citizens, they're already here. It's not like you're going to be able to make them leave. But if we just put those efforts to, like, let's get these people to become part of the United States, to pay taxes, to make them feel like they're part of our culture and our economy, and like, let's grow, because that's what has made America so wonderful, is this opportunity of taking people and different cultures, putting it into a big mixing pot and seeing, like, just the success that comes from it. Like, that should be our focus. That should be what President Biden wants to make his legacy for the next 3 years. Is this country came out of a bloody scrap in the Middle East. It was bloodier than it should have been on the exit. But after that, for 3 years, we helped undocumented immigrants in this country become legal citizens. We developed some sort of workable, attainable health care. We cut costs and increased opportunities for educational programs for the children of these millions of immigrants that are coming in every single year. And we're making people, like, really proud to be American, and not so politically divisive. Like, if we don't have spending on war and war hawks in Congress, and we have people that are focused on social programs, they can be Republican led. I don't care. But let's at least get buy-in from communities and say, hey, we're going to reform voting rights. We are going to get rid of gerrymandering. Like, I want an active liberty type democracy here where we have way more buy-in. Like, America is about the people. Let's focus on our people.
Do you really think that's going to happen though? I mean, I think the next, looming thing is going to be COVID, and, things are shutting back down again. The states are shutting back down. I can only imagine, kind of the, are we going to go back to 2020 era, 2020 times of, like, everything shut down, nobody's working?
I don't think we'll go back to that, because like the 10th Amendment is pretty clear. The public health and welfare falls squarely on the states and the state responses. I don't see a federal response occurring. But what I do see is billions of dollars now that the United States was spending abroad now coming back to the United States and being distributed to communities, across the country. At least that's my hope. And, just kind of improving the lives of Americans.
Yeah, I really hope so. I just hope it doesn't go back. It is so frustrating. And then Christina talks about almost every day when she comes home from work that, their hospital's getting slammed with COVID patients, and they're all pretty sick people. They're all like 40s to 50s now. Now is this the second wave. Like, the first wave was all like old people that were getting sick.
Right.
Now it's all like young 40s to 50s, pretty much otherwise healthy, coming in with, pretty severe COVID because they're, surprise, unvaccinated.
Yeah, that's something we're going to definitely talk about for the next year. I know, like my buddy in Florida, who's an absolutely gorgeous ranger. Shout out to his lady for listening to our podcast and keeping him informed of what we talk about. They were all sick with COVID, and for like a year we've been talking about, oh, it's not bad, but like with what you said last week, we get these new strains. And we get these new strains because people either don't get vaccinated, or we're not wearing the masks, and it transfers and it has the opportunity to mutate where it maybe otherwise wouldn't. it's just frustrating because there's so many other vaccines, and we've talked about this, and again, won't beat a dead horse. There's so much shit people put in their body. Like, how many of these people go to Starbucks and get drinks with all these additives, and they have no fucking clue what was put in their coffee, but they're worried about something which is now FDA authorized, has somehow been made unsafe because we can't trust the federal government, when 2 years ago we were trusting them, or a year ago it was Operation Warp Speed. It was the President Trump's administration that pushed this and made this so readily available. Like, people have such short-term memories. It's just super frustrating. It's like, it's just so easy to do the right thing. We were talking before we started recording, I've got my Ironman in less than 3 weeks. My workout today crushed my soul. I'm going to be pissed if it gets canceled in the next 2 weeks. I know the race is going to absolutely suck, but I want to do that suck. And if it gets taken from me because we've got increasing cases, it's just frustrating. It's just preventable. Like, if you think you're Superman and you can be fine, I implore you, then don't go to the doctor ever again for anything. Because if you think the flu is something that you can get over, well, then guess what? Like, diabetes, you shouldn't be taking the diabetes medication. You have no idea what's in that. You didn't do the research. You don't know how fast it was pushed through. Do you know when the FDA approved it, and or when or how? So, when you've been sucking down butter products for the last 45 years of your life on every single meal, and have basically been putting steaks in a blender right into your arteries, I don't want to hear your shit when you go to the hospital trying to get checked out for that. Okay, where we have to amputate your arm because you were cutting the grass and you got tetanus because you didn't want to get a tetanus shot. Like, that's on you, dude. I don't want to deal with that.
I thought it was do you see something in the news? I think we've talked about this with like in Florida, a bunch of doctors like quit and nurses quit, and then they're getting like lambasted for not helping other people. Did you see that?
Yeah, again, I had a mixed feeling about that. And I know you're a doctor, so I think we should start the conversation with you, so I know how not to offend you going forward with this if I do.
Yeah. So I will say that, it's I think that's healthcare has kind of been a unspoken, maybe unrecognized facet of what's been going on the last year and a half, 2 years. The hospital systems are very overwhelmed, doctors overwhelmed, nurses overwhelmed, everybody's overwhelmed. And the interesting thing is that now more than ever, there's a healthcare shortage in America where nurses and doctors are now retiring or getting out early or just quitting their jobs for second careers because they're just burnt out from everything that's been going on. And it can be, I mean, personally, I haven't taken too much care of too many COVID patients, but I can imagine if that's all you've been doing for the last year and a half, taking care of COVID patients, and then, we're done like, the vaccines here, people are getting like things are going back to normal, and then we get hit with like the second strain of this, and people are dying still. And I can only imagine kind of the burnt out and the frustration that you would feel because, you have people that are refusing the vaccinations and then coming to the hospital really sick with COVID, getting intubated, and then you still have these patients saying that, oh, I don't believe in the vaccine still, when they're literally dying. I can only imagine how frustrating that is to be on the receiving end of that conversation. Where Christina did the same thing, where it's like she had a patient come in with COVID. He's like 40 years old and like diabetes, so not well to begin with, but not vaccinated, and he's like I don't want, like, why aren't you guys giving me ivermectin or chloroquine? And then his wife will call in and she's like, I don't want him to die. But it's like, it's very preventable at this point. Like, we know that if you're vaccinated, you have less, severe consequences of getting COVID, even if you are sick.
Right.
So, I'm actually kind I look kind of favorably on these doctors because I think a lot of people take healthcare as like take it for granted, and that they think that it's their right to have good healthcare. But if you don't take care of yourself and then you expect other people to work and sacrifice on your behalf when you very easily could have done something to prevent it, that's kind of on you, and that's kind of you reaping the own consequences of your own actions. And then, not to mention, on the healthcare like administration aspect of it, hospitals are still it's a very predatory system, and a lot of healthcare systems where, hospital administration is like making, hand over fist essentially money from the government for COVID. But then, these all this revenue doesn't trickle down to the people that actually work in the hospital. Um,
Right.
Everything, or all the hospitals around us are like offering like $10,000 signing bonuses for nurses because they're so short on staff because everybody's left the system. So it's just like I think healthcare, and it doesn't really get spoken too much in everyday, like most people, it's not in the conversation, but I think that we're going into kind of a crisis mode in terms of the healthcare of America because we're now facing a shortage of nurses and staff and people that are willing to go into this profession that is, on the whole, like kind of shit on by the public, uneducated public, you know.
Oh, as being something that, like, I don't need to trust what this person that studied 4 to 8 years has to say because I listen to a demagogue.
Yeah, and that's like kind of, a lot of doctors are seeing that too. I think that's kind of shifting nowadays too, with a lot of people that are, the more talented people are going into other fields that pay better and have better lifestyles than doctors. Because if you think about, like, for doctors,
OnlyFans.
yeah, which is now doing porn again, but like for doctors, like, I'm obviously a little biased in this situation, but for most physicians, like, you don't hit your peak earning potential until you're in your early to late 30s, depending on what specialty you go into. And then you talk about like hundreds of thousands, if not like $1 million worth of debt to get to med school and then
And
become
you're
a
an idiot
physician.
because you're in the military as a doctor. So like you're double fucked.
Yeah, but I can retire at age 20 or at age 46 and at least get a pension and then go make some real money. But that's not the point. Didn't become a doctor to make money, but um, a lot of
For
people
the
are,
white lab coat, I get it.
yeah. I don't wear that much anymore, but the point being is that I think that in America we take healthcare for granted very much, and that we just, a lot of people just think that just because they're sick, they have a right or deserve to get, the top treatment that money can pay for, but what they're not willing to, put in the time and effort to make themselves better.
Right. I was kind of mixed on this because there were like 70 plus doctors and nurses that stepped out. And I think from an optics standpoint, it was a poor look again, because if we're going to claim that the hospitals are swamped, if we can't manage floors and fill these vacancies with staff to take care of people, then why do we have so many of these dozens that can take time to come out and protest essentially? I understand that some of them are probably off shift, but at the same point, like, you signed up to serve and protect the health of others. And I looked at it from a, if we had to go out, and we did go out, we're constantly fighting the battles in Afghanistan where we were, that the police and the local armies could have easily and satisfactorily completed. Yet I'm every single day having to take out my platoon with the mine rollers attached to clear part of Highway 1, or to go and interdict on the facilitation routes where men, weapons, and equipment were coming up through the deserts. Like that increased, and that was annoying. But it's like, that's what we signed up for. So, if it's not COVID, what other influx could it be for doctors? Not to take away from your point of saying like doctors get burned out, because I'm frustrated as a civilian dealing with it. If you were seeing the same thing over and over again and it was preventable, I think we could take that argument to, well, how should the response then be to obesity when we've got a population that's 60-70% overweight, all of the comorbidities that are associated with that doctors seem to be silent on too. It's like, well, that is not as a short term of an issue as COVID-19 is, but that's a very long term. God, we are constantly dealing with this person's type 2 diabetes that you get, that you inflict on yourself, or God, like another person with heart disease because they're overweight, or man, this idiot could not land a 900 and busted his knee for the second time on the large vert ramp. Tony Hawk, we're not treating you today. Like, just kind of where is that line then that we cross of we're not helping these people anymore? I mean, do you see that kind of being at odds with the Hippocratic Oath?
I mean, I think it's two different things though, because I mean, in the military, I don't think you can't contrast or compare like being in healthcare to being in the military. Like, you're not like, under contract to, there's no like, oath necessarily, but at the end of the day, most people do join medicine to take care of other people. But, I think that healthcare as a whole is feeling probably a little underappreciated, and is being pushed and being forced to do things that like I mentioned, are totally preventable in terms of COVID and vaccinations. But it's also just like I think healthcare also doesn't do a very good job of voicing and doing good like PR about things. And I think like the New York Times had a pretty good piece recently about like in the COVID ICU and like having like nurses wear like GoPros and then kind of documenting that experience. Because I think a lot of people just just through like social media or what have you, or just have this like rosy colored picture of healthcare, and that like it is, you just show up for work, you give people some medicines, they get better or what have you. But I don't know. I think unless you're in it, you don't really can really appreciate kind of the struggles and how difficult it can be.
It's got to be frustrating too when you have actual patients, and not to say that people with COVID-19 aren't actual patients, but individuals coming in with some sort of a trauma injury, or they're dealing with another physical ailment, and you don't have bed space for them. You don't have people on site that can deal with them in a rapid manner when the emergency escalates, because they're dealing with the exact same people, the 40 to 60-year-olds that you were mentioning, that are having difficulty breathing because they didn't take a preventable, readily available vaccine. Like, that is definitely frustrating. But I think it goes back to, not a lot of people have connections to those in the military. I think that's why a lot of people have kind of written off Afghanistan as, okay, that's affecting someone else. But it's the same thing with medicine. Aside from you and like one other friend, I don't know anyone in medicine. And I'm sure that that's pretty common across the country, is people not having, friends or family that are in medicine that are getting these, firsthand accounts of how bad the hospitals are getting, or when they say, hey, it's going to get worse, and not understanding what that looks like.
Yeah, like I think that's a good point you brought up about kind of the bed capacity. Like in our hospital, at any point in time, there's up to like 5 to 10 people that are boarding in the ED because there's no beds available in the actual hospital. So, there's definitely increased stress on healthcare systems, because you have people that have COVID that are like going to be on a ventilator for like, months possibly at a time, that are just sucking up space and resources that could be used on other people with, more treatable or less morbid conditions. And then you can talk about kind of the wasted effort on people with treatable diseases that couldn't get treated. For example, people like cancer that missed diagnosis and screening tests that could have caught like an early stage cancer, and then they presented at a later stage and then have a a terminal diagnosis when they could have been prevented or treated like months ago, but couldn't come in the hospital because there weren't enough beds available, or didn't able to get a colonoscopy because the colonoscopy suite was shut down because of COVID. So I'm very interested in seeing kind of the future, like the data coming out about the true cost of COVID in terms of preventable deaths, but also in the second and third order effects from having hospital systems so stressed that they mistakes happen, or there aren't enough resources to go to people with treatable diseases that could have done better. I hope that somebody puts that data point together and presents that data, because that's something I'm very interested in seeing.
I think what's also interesting is people that are sitting on their platforms, and I'm going to go after Democrats in this situation too, that were either hyping up COVID-19 to be way worse than it apparently was for them, in order to go to a donor dinner with $10,000 plates, Nancy Pelosi to host a massive 60th birthday bash, President Obama, like maskless. Like that's the kind of stuff that if I already am in a headspace where I don't trust politicians and don't trust what they're saying about COVID and see that kind of activity, it's going to make me question, well, why do I need to get this vaccine if it's so deadly and dangerous that being maskless vaccinated, we now have to go back to a masked environment, but you're still, performing these kind of activities. I can't trust the doublespeak or the Republican governors that are vaccinated that are downplaying, COVID severity in children, knowing that, beds are now going at a much higher rate to children as they enter school, or adults with, children are going to the hospital at a much higher rate because their children are bringing back the Delta strain, or we have an increase in breakthroughs. But all these individuals are either vaccinated or have had to go to the hospital themselves to deal with COVID. Like that's like that failure of leadership, of being honest and transparent with those that you're supposed to serve, for a political purpose. And it's just super frustrating because it's avoidable. If people were just honest and said, I got the vaccine because X, Y, and Z, then when they made a comment like, oh, it's everyone's choice and the data suggests that it's really not that bad. It's like, well, then why did you get it? Why didn't you follow your own advice and not get it? Or, hey, Nancy Pelosi, why the fuck did you go to a maskless dinner with dozens of people sitting shoulder to shoulder unmasked if it's really that bad? I mean, it's such a bad look. And it's so hard to create like a credible source of what COVID really means, aside from Cronus Fit, because we are number one in the world for credibility. So it's just frustrating.
Yeah, and I think, there's so much out there between all the different news sources that have become more or less politicized that nobody really knows what to believe. And, you have people out there that, are accounts and sources that intentionally give you bad information in order to downplay something or upplay something else. So, it's hard. I get it. It's like hard to know what is right, what is wrong, what to believe, what not to believe. And then I don't know. I just know that the hospital, it sucks right now. The hospitals across the country are short of staff, and that is having second, third order effects across the country where people are not getting, good health care, and that we can't keep asking, public service for like, people in public service like EMS and, police and healthcare to continue sacrificing and pushing themselves to, because people aren't willing to get a vaccine and do all the things to, prevent it themselves.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see where we are in, a couple months when schools are really like in full effect, back in swing. Like a lot of kids don't go back until September. So I'm sure those states are going to see an influx of cases. I don't know what this is going to look like for testing. I'll be interested to see what the booster shot looks like, to be honest. I think they were saying, 8 months was the recommended time period between the second or the full dose with this booster. And now they're talking about 5 months being that operable window, and like whether somewhere like Fordham requires me to get the booster just to get on campus, like they have with the vaccine and their own mask mandate. Again, I just want to fast forward to a time where I am maskless, where this face is blessing the path, the subway, the streets of New York. There's something better to look at than the skyline, and it's right here. It's got its own skyline if I turn a certain direction. Those are the things that I was put on this earth to do, and I'm not doing it. I look like a fucking bumper car with a mask on, like a light blue and white bumper car. And that is stupid.
Yeah, I'm kind of now that the DoD is mandating vaccines now, I'm kind of curious to see how many people are going to get like chaptered out now, or because I think they're going to do like a disarmable discharge for this now.
Yeah, I'll be interested. And for those that have served a long while that are questioning whether they should get the vaccine, you didn't question all the other shots that you've been given up to this point, or whether emergency use was used when the vaccines were originally created. You probably didn't bitch this much on social media, even though it wasn't a thing when you were ordered to go do a raid in a dangerous place or to pull a fire guard shift on a random cop that you knew was going to be mortared or attacked. But you're completely fine with jeopardizing your career over a shot. That's the hill you want to die on. It doesn't make much sense to me, but again, it's your right. Like, via con Dios. Dead space. You thought we ended, didn't you?
Anything else you want to end with? I think we'll start wrapping with that.
Yeah, if you have not seen Vacation Friends on Hulu with John Cena, another individual that when I'm jacked I've been compared to, that movie is fucking hilarious. It is so good, and he plays a special forces veteran in the film. But unlike a lot of SF dudes nowadays, doesn't just go and tell everybody that he's SF. He's the quiet professional, the type that isn't on social media. So it's a great movie, and surprisingly, it does deal a little bit with like PTSD. A shocker, spoiler. Sorry, I didn't put that warning out there. But it's a hilarious movie. It's almost like what you want to see with a John Cena, just jacked, shirtless, and just being a savage, and savage in comedy instead of Randy Orton.
I've got anything else? Nothing recently that I've watched that's worth mentioning.
Well, that's frustrating. Oh, that's right, because you're in a hospital doing your job. See, I'm just a student, man. I read my shit and then I watch TV. All right, more Dead Space. We'll pick up the banter again. But again, shout out to all of our Cronus scholars. Congratulations. If you or someone's going to transition next year, drop your application to us. Would love to review that. If you have questions, if you've already transitioned, we can try to connect you with folks in the right department. Huge thanks again to 10,000, and please implore others to do the right thing with vaccines if you really do want to see this face. Otherwise, I should just start. You know what? I'll protest and wear a mask next week. Just kidding. I'm not, because YouTube, you're free to do what you want.
All right, guys. We'll end it with that. We will catch you guys next time. Will not be next week, but maybe the week after. We shall see.
Peace.
Later.